to the Boropolis podcast. As usual, I'm joined with Nathan, and well, we've got one hell of a podcast to do this week, haven't we, Nathan? 2 wins. One of the wins, it's you've been itching away. I've had a text almost every day. Oh, let's just do a podcast now. Of course, about the Chelsea game. You're finally going to get your moment now to relive it, Nathan. And of course, we took the risk of waiting and including the Millwall game in this podcast as well. Thankfully, we don't go from one high down to a serious low. We can just maintain positivity throughout the episode. 2 wins to talk about. The mood is fantastic, really, as good as it's been in weeks in these episodes. And yeah, I'm ready to dive straight into it. I haven't even asked how you are, but I know that you'll be in a very good mood, to be honest.
Yeah, I am. Thanks for asking, Chris. Yeah. Um, Last week, bit of a strange one, having to discuss Coventry and Villa, both defeats. But after the Villa game, we did feel a little bit more positive. But I couldn't get myself too excited last week about the Chelsea game because of ongoing uni assessments, and even after it, really, because I had uni assessments due last Wednesday. But they're all handed in now, and I am just kicking back and relaxing for the next week before starting again. So yeah, gonna chill back with a latte for this episode, and yeah, talk about 2 fantastic wins. One of the best nights at the Riverside I think I've ever had last week, and following it up with a very untypical Boro result following a very big high in the week with another win in the league. So yeah, really excited to get into this episode. But yeah, Chris, how are you doing as well? Just in general rather than Middlesbrough.
Yeah, I'm good, mate. Do you know what? When people ask you this, it's probably you're in the same boat. When people say, "Oh, how are you?" and they probably don't say, "Oh," if you don't factor Middlesbrough into that. But let's be honest, it's probably about 60% of your mood, or at least it is for me anyway. Majority of the time, that's probably quite sad to be honest. But it does have a way bigger impact than what it should. So yeah, overall, I'm absolutely sound. I'm happy, Nathan. And like you say, ready to get into this. So without further ado, let's delve straight into it. Obviously, Chelsea, we knew that we were going to have some players back. We knew Hackney was back. Of course, Latif had come on as a sub against Villa, had a little run out. Crooks was an unused substitute, but he come into the team. Latif, of course, started. Hayden Hackney was in there as well. And then we had the cup ties and suspensions. Of course, Azaz wasn't available. Greenwood wasn't available, as he hasn't been throughout. And then Morgan Rogers suspended. So similar setup to Villa. As we said last week, a little bit of a trial run in terms of the formation. And it seemed to work fairly well against Villa. And that was from early on quite clearly going to be the exact same tactic against this Chelsea side. Unfortunately, when you're trying to produce a performance up against everything that you can possibly imagine, and then 2 of your players go off within the first 20 minutes, it makes that sort of mountain to climb even larger before you've even reached halfway. It wasn't an ideal start, was it?
No, it wasn't. Obviously, the sort of the game plan is you back five. You've got width with Jones and Bangura there. You've packed the midfield even a little bit more than the Villa game because you have Barlaser, Housen, and Hackney in there. Hackney did get forward a little bit more often than the other two, but still packing the midfield when we are out of possession, and then Crooks just supporting like Elath, and then yeah, obviously you have the atmosphere, everyone's up for it, the scarves, the tifo before the game. The atmosphere was absolutely just top class prior kickoff. And within 30 seconds, Latif threw on goal, and you think, oh my God, this is it. We're going to start at like a house on fire, going to go 1-0 up here. And he just doesn't get a good enough connection on the shot. P rolls it to Petrovic, and gets injured in the process, tries to carry on and can't. Coburn comes on, which doesn't offer you the same as Lath and the pacing behind Thiago Silva and Disasi. And then obviously Bangura, the same on that left-hand side. So you have to sort of alternate your way of playing. But luckily, with some players back on the bench, it did allow us to sort of keep the same shape. Coburn going up front, as mentioned, and then Matt Clark filling in at left centre half, allowing Engel to play at left wing back. So, yeah, luckily we did have those two options just to sort of keep the same shape and keep the game plan as it was. But yeah, it was not the ideal start on the injury front. But yeah, it would have been ridiculous to go 1-0 in front after literally 30 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, you sort of everyone was up out of the chair thinking, shooting not, we're only what 50 seconds into the game or something. And actually, a few people made the case that it might have been a penalty, but I think I wasn't really sure about those. I think he'd got his shot off and just not made enough contact, really. Um, Obviously, sort of jumping forward a little bit, we now know that Bangor and Lilac are going to be out for, I can't remember the exact quote, but it sounded like a couple of weeks at least, really, judging by the way it was worded, which is obviously, again, a major blow. And of course, we'll get onto the striker problems further on in the podcast and the the other injury that we've had up there, which is making life even more difficult. Yeah, but as you say, had the chance to go one up, didn't, had the injury problems. The mountain was getting bigger and bigger. And then Johnny Howson decides that, do you know what? I'm just going to give Cole Palmer a chance. And for the life of me, a player of Cole Palmer's ability, in the form that he's been in so far at Chelsea, you're just expecting him to roll it into the corner. And somehow he doesn't. And I still can't quite believe that he hasn't managed to just roll it in to this point now. And we're, well, nearly a week on.
Yeah, it was a huge let off, really. I'm going to be totally honest with my opinion on Chelsea, sort of just on the whole game as we're discussing them, but they didn't create pretty much anything in the game. Their chances were coming from our own mistakes, really. This one from Johnny Howson, just trying to play a ball into Barlasser, and he doesn't have enough on it. I don't think he necessarily, well, he surely must know that Palmer's there, but evidently doesn't anticipate him being able to latch onto the ball, and he gets onto that, and his first touch sets him straight away to fire the shot. And yeah, as he rolls it, you're thinking, yeah, 1-0 Chelsea, and somehow he's missed the target. It rolls wide. It's a sitter and a huge let off, and you've just got to take a big, massive sigh of relief because the ground just fell silent for a second after the initial sort of sigh as the ball's being passed to Palmer. The ground falls silent, and then it's greeted with a slight jeer, but it was a jeer more in sort of relief than in joking fashion. But yeah, I couldn't believe he'd missed. But yeah, you're starting to think that it could be your night.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a few other chances. Cole Palmer gets another great chance after we take the lead, but of course, we do go into the lead. I mean, we've had some really good nights at the Riverside. We obviously had Brighton, Tottenham. We had the playoff game against Brentford, and there's a few others that you can throw into there during the promotion season and things like that. But I think this is right up there in terms of our lifetime of going to Middlesbrough matches. Of course, we were unfortunate to miss out on on the run in Europe and a few other nights around that time. But the moment where Hayden Hackney prods it in with his left foot, runs towards the south stand, it's just one of those Middlesbrough memories for us, for younger fans, I'm sure even for older fans, where it's just never going to leave us, is it? And it's actually a really well worked goal. I think that kind of got like lost in the moment of everyone just losing it completely. The absolute scenes in every stand, well, apart from where Chelsea were, and yeah, just the general pandemonium of thinking, oh my God, we've actually gone 1-0 up against Chelsea. It's a really well worked goal, to be fair.
Yeah, it is. Barlaser playing that ball over the top, and something that was a regular theme in the first half, I thought was Jones being able to beat Colwell in a foot race. And he gets on the end of this ball, initially tries to cross it and it's blocked, sort of ricochets back to him, which is fortuitous, I suppose. But then delivers across through Colwell's legs. And yeah, actually, £100 million Moises Caicedo doesn't track Hayden Hackney, who sprints towards the edge of the box, slows down, but then speeds up again, gets across that front post, and yeah, prods it beyond Petrovic. It's a really well worked goal, as mentioned. It's a good, tidy finish beyond the goalkeeper. And I'm going to be honest, I didn't see who'd scored the goal because it's nice to have a full Riverside, but at the same time, it's also nice. Sorry, not very nice to have a lot of fans that don't usually attend games stand up every time we enter the opposition half. Um, so yeah, saw the ball hit the back of the net, didn't see who scored. Just my eyesight, and I've still got the picture in my head now, was as I've jumped up, I can see the bench and just seeing Carrick spin round and give a massive fist to the crowd, and Woodgate and Danks jump off the bench, flying all over the place in the technical area. And yeah, just hearing the Riverside pretty much explode with noise. Um, Possibly one of the loudest reactions to a goal I've ever heard from the Riverside. Um, and yeah, it was a sort of strange game, as I'm mentioning. Obviously, the Riverside was full on the night, and it sold out on the day of the game because it was on general sale to fans. And there's a few uh tourists.
I knew, I knew you were going to this point
There's a
because
few,
obviously, as if you listen to this podcast, you know that Nathan sits fairly close to me, so he comes up the stairs and has a word with me at half time. Likes to give us, well, we share our thoughts on the first half performance, and despite us being 1-0 up against Chelsea and performing largely very very well, Nathan's number one complaint was the fact that there was quite obviously some hidden Chelsea fans sat right beside you.
yeah. So they s- ever so slightly rose off their seat when Hackney scored and gave it a very wry round of applause. Um, but yeah, they certainly knew my feelings on them being there by the end of the game. And yeah, we did have a little conversation about that as they were leaving at full time. But yeah, hopefully we never see them in the Riverside ever again.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, well, unless we get promoted, they've got no reason to, I suppose. Um, but yeah, as you say, the atmosphere was just incredible. And I sort of skipped over it, to be fair. I was just wanting to talk about Hartley's goal straight away. But just on the scarves, of course, a massive shout out to the 12th man group who organised all of that. It was a real good addition, as well as the tifo and the display that Red Faction. We all know how great they are when they do that, but I thought the scarves added that extra little bit. And there was a lot of talk prior kickoff about, you know, whatever happens if Chelsea go 1-up, and of course they didn't, but they went very close a few times. It was just keep behind the team, stay with the team, make sure that they've got full belief that we can get something out of this game. And My goodness. Do you know what? We sit in the West, and I mean, look, it's the quietest part of the ground. We're not questioning that at all. Even at times, the West was giving it a little bit of a go, and you thought, fair play. Do you know what? There's a lot of the older generation that sit where me and you do, and there was a few of them on the feet. I mean, fair play to them. And yeah, throughout the full game, whether Chelsea were on top, and sometimes you need the crowd more when the opposition is, pegging you back and you feel like a goal is just round the corner, just to sort of give you that extra couple of percent to go and just hoy your body at it. And Matt Clark, my goodness, he was definitely feeling that extra few percent. But yeah, it was just a real gritty, lovely sort of backs against the wall, give everything performance, typical cup tie at the Riverside. And as you say, that atmosphere just played such a huge part in it. And from the moment that Hackney scored, the atmosphere didn't get any worse. It didn't sort of drop. It was just constant throughout. And I must say as well, I thought the Chelsea fans were an absolute embarrassment. I didn't. I think I heard them once, but to be fair, they were drowned out by Middlesbrough fans anyway. So it's not a huge surprise that you couldn't hear a word from them. But yeah, we obviously have that moment. And then shortly after, Cole Palmer gets his second absolute sitter of the game. And I mean, a player of that quality, as I said, you expect maybe one chance to go begging, but not two. I think it's Enzo has an effort from the edge of the box. Tom Glover goes to sort of pat it down, I think. Or, in fact, no, sorry. He tries to catch it. The catch sort of bounces off his chest. He doesn't quite get it right. It falls to Palmer and he just, on the volley, puts it straight over the bar. Glover probably brings him down, but he's already missed by this point. And at that moment, I'm not going to lie, and this goes against everything I am as a football fan. You probably know if you listen to this podcast. Nathan definitely knows because he just hears me every day of the week talking about, oh, well, one slight positive is, right, well, we're going up. And one slight negative is, well, that's us done then for this season. And as soon as Palmer missed that chance, I thought, this might just be our night. Because it's not often a player of that quality misses two chances that are that good.
Yeah, it is exactly that. And then moments later, it's the chance where they actually carve us open. I think
Yeah,
within two passes, from back to front, Caicedo plays it into Palmer. He chops back in onto his left foot, hits the shot, and Glover is able to sort of parry it. And in the most fortuitous way possible, it just comes nicely back off Johnny House and straight back into his gloves. And you just think when that sort of thing happens that your luck is in. And it is sort of one of them things in cup ties. We've had it a lot over the years, obviously having played United, Spurs, and Chelsea over the years, where to beat these sides you do need that little bit of luck. Like obviously, I suppose by law the Watmore goal should stand. The Watmore and Crooks goal at Man United, it should stand, but realistically it's handball. Um, the Spurs game, obviously Kane's offside for that goal, and there's other instances where they had a chance in that Spurs game and it comes off Crooks, and like Lumley gets down and makes a ridiculous save for like the first time in his Middlesbrough career, makes a really good save. Um, so look, you have to have a look in these cup ties, and from the first leg, our luck was in. It really was. I wasn't necessarily impressed really with Chelsea in terms of their chance creation. Um, but yeah, they should have certainly scored at least one on the night and didn't. And yeah, I think that we did quite well in terms of being able to limit their chance creation, but just need to be a little bit more careful in actually giving them chances ourselves,
Yeah,
because it will come to bite us if you keep giving them chances. They're bound to score one eventually, because of the quality that they do have. It will shine through eventually. Um, but yeah, on the whole, was really impressed with our performance. Just because of the ability to dig in the second half. It was backs against the wall. You could sort of see the team falling deeper and deeper and deeper in that second half, but they managed it. And weirdly, I don't think on the ball it was our best performance that I've ever seen. I thought that we were sloppy at times, but part of that was down to something that did impress me, which was Chelsea's pressing. I thought they pressed really well all over the pitch, really. Um, but yeah, I think you've got to factor the injuries in. We didn't have that sort of chip over the top or into a channel anymore once Lath had gone off. Coburn doesn't necessarily give you that, but if you have Lath, I think he causes a lot more problems for Disasi and Thiago Silva in that second half. They'd have probably had to drop off a little bit further than they were because they'd have been wary of his pacing behind. But yeah, we survived, and yeah, 1-0 in the first leg. We spoke last week and just sort of were both of the opinion that as long as we stay in the tie, we're fine with that. As long as we go to Stamford Bridge and we're sort of still in it, we take that. The odds are stacked against us, and we're more than in the tie, I suppose. We've actually got a lead going to Stamford Bridge. Okay, I'm still, I know it's a bit weird to say having watched Chelsea there, but going to their place, I do expect us to probably lose the game. Um, but you just never know. You really don't know. And yeah, no matter what happens in the second leg, this is the opinion of most. No matter what happens in the second leg, we'll always have that home leg. We beat Chelsea and we were deserved winners on the night. Um, yeah, really proud of the players, of the fans as well. I thought it was an incredible atmosphere, one of the best atmospheres I've experienced as a fan at the Riverside. So yeah, a top night at the Riverside that will live long in the memory.
yeah, absolutely. And as you say, I think it's the opinion of most that regardless of what happens, we'll always have that night against Chelsea. And at first, when the draw was made, I almost thought, oh, well, if we can go to Stamford Bridge first and then bring it back to the Riverside and it's still within reach and we can, really pack out the Riverside and hopefully pull off something in the second leg. Of course, we're all talking about what ifs and it might not have happened. And, we're all talking about stuff that, well, is not going to happen now. But it's sort of almost not justified, but it made me realize that actually, I think all along, having the first leg at the Riverside was always probably the better option. And I know it wasn't an option, it was the better of the draw, really. But having the ability to, pack out the Riverside, everyone headed to the game thinking it was unexpected, but there was still a chance. And obviously, we take the lead in the tie going into the second leg. But can you imagine having that night taken away from you and going to Stamford Bridge on the first leg of the tie, getting beat by a few, and then the Riverside might have not even been full in the second leg, and you think, God, it could have all been so different. And listen, we might go and get thumped, but as you say, we're always going to have that night against Chelsea now. And just when you said, obviously, the luck was in on the night, I think it was fair to say in certain moments with odd bounces and things like that, it was definitely the case. But I think huge credit's got to go to the back five. And I know there was some standout performers. Johnny Howson just seems to turn into an absolute different animal on nights like that. But I thought Dale Fry, Matt Clark, both deserve huge credit. Glover again was very, very good. And Matt Clark, I mean, it seems like he's a sort of common theme on the podcast now, week in, week out. But 14 months out, and then he goes and has a performance like that. I mean, his head was literally a magnet to the ball in the second half. Everything that come into the box, he just headed or kicked or used one of his limbs to sort of clear. Dale Fry had another similar to Johnny Howson that he just comes alive on nights like that. He again was incredible. Lucas Engel, I mean, we'll get onto him in the Millwall game as well. But my goodness, everyone is always just going to point back to that first half at Hillsborough as a comparison to where he is now. And I mean, just incredible. First in the tackle, getting above Gusto. I mean, they brought Mudryk on. He played against Madueke first half, who did cause them a few problems, but nothing of real note. Sterling moved over to that side. Gusto all night, who I actually thought, despite him being taken off, was one of Chelsea's better players. Constantly on the overlap, constantly wanted to get at the fullback, and Engel just seemed to deal with it. And without any real sort of like lunging challenges where you think, oh dear God, that's a bit late, or he's in bother there. Just with no real challenge, to be honest. What a performance from him. And just overall, what a team performance, as you say. A real pride at the performance, and almost with this current team, it's getting into that territory again where, listen, we don't know any players by, if I walked past a player in the street, none of them would. And of course, most supporters are in this bracket where they wouldn't go, "Are you all right?" But it feels like you do know them. And you feel that sort of pride as though that they're your mates out there. They're giving everything, and you've got that pride of, they really know what it means to the supporters. And it works both ways because the supporters have got to give them something to build on. And it just felt like one of those performances. And there is that feeling of something's bubbling away, something's building at the moment. And it's always a great feeling when you have that sort of relationship and connection between players and fans. And yeah, as you say, just finishing up on Chelsea, we have something to go at Stamford Bridge with and protect. And that's all we asked for. I think me and you both said we'd be happy if we just kept it within one goal. Well, we've kept it within one goal, but we're in the lead and we've got something to protect. Obviously, we're not going to sort of talk about the second leg now because it'll be next podcast, won't it? Previewing that after Rotherham. But yeah, I mean, tickets sold out, I think, minutes after Hackney had scored. I made the critical error of being a sort of, listen, I'm open on this podcast, a Fairweather Cup fan. I thought, well, I'll give it the first leg and then I'll think about it in regards to attending the second leg. Well, got into the car, of course. I made my way back to Newcastle with my dad. I'm sure you're already home by this point. Sent you a message. Chelsea might be on. How many points you got? Yeah, okay, you can get a ticket right now. Went to look. No, they're gone. And it's my own fault. I should have had more belief. I didn't. But yeah, I'm sure, I don't even know how many it is, a couple of thousand, you included, are going to go and roar on that Middlesbrough team and hope that they can pull off the unthinkable. But yeah, just overall, what a night, Nathan, and one that is going to live so long in the memory. And what's even better is, I think the reason, as I alluded to earlier on in the podcast, is you said we need to record a podcast on Wednesday or Thursday and talk about this, because if we go to Millwall and get beat, it's just going to take away from everything that we've done on Tuesday night. And I said, no, honestly, I'm feeling quite confident about Millwall. It's our usual upload schedule. We'll do it and we'll get it up on Monday night. Well, thankfully I did, because we've got a 2-win podcast. And I think it was last season, probably the last time we had that, or maybe a good few months ago now. and we do have that now. But of course, just touching before we go into Millwall, confirmation of the sign of Luke Ayling, and it's sort of just we knew of the interest. We discussed it last podcast, and then literally, what was it, 7:15 or something on Wednesday morning, David Ornstein confirmed that he was having his medical, and that was pretty much the Luke Ayling deal was done. Of course, out of contract at Leeds at the end of this season, and joining us on loan for the remainder of the season. As we sort of discussed in the last podcast, a real solid addition, a player that can do both in terms of he's comfortable playing centre half, but he's also his natural position's right back. Tons of experience, a little bit of know-how. Got that feeling already of sort of player that you don't want to play against, but when he's in your team, he's your shithouse, and you love him for it. And yeah, a really good bit of business, and credit again to the recruitment team for getting this done so quickly.
Yeah. We sort of knew that this deal was in the pipeline, didn't we? And then discussing on Tuesday night after the Chelsea game with you, and we were up till disgusting hours of Wednesday morning just waffling over message, and we're both going, yeah, looks like there's gonna be some news on Ayling in the morning. Who's gonna be up? Said, yeah, I'll be up at whatever time because I had work and stuff to do. So I'm there, alarm set for 7:45, like that, with my eyes literally hardly even open. Literally bang on Twitter straight away. David Ornstein, Luke Ayling, like that. Posting it on Boropolis with my eyes half awake and half asleep still. But yeah, that was done pretty quickly. My mate had actually messaged me on Tuesday night after the Chelsea game, and he sits right behind, literally right behind the Boro dugout where the injured players sit. He sits with them, and he'd said Luke Ayling was in the tunnel at full time for the Chelsea game, so you knew it was. I knew it was close then. So yeah, really pleased to get this one over the line. Actually, there was a lot of skepticism from Boro fans in the replies to our tweet about him undergoing his medical. What we signing him for? He doesn't fit the model. Yada yada yada. And I'd actually disagree. If you look at some of the players that we've lost this season to injury, Lenihan and Smith, two of our experienced heads in there, two of our leaders that both play sort of in that back four, and especially with our problems at right back all season that we've had with Dyke Steele in and out of injury, in and out of getting himself suspended, and Smith going down with injury straight away, Vandenberg having to play there pretty much most of the season. So yeah, really pleased to get this one over the line. Didn't necessarily know how he'd perform. Looking at Leeds fans saying that he'd possibly lost his legs or was in the process of losing his legs. But we'll discuss on his performance at Millwall. But yeah, as mentioned by yourself, Chris, we've got ourselves a proper horrible shithouse to play for us. And I am absolutely all for it because over the years, it's felt at times, not all the time, but at times, that Middlesbrough are a little bit too nice. And quite frankly, in those moments where you can see, like Leeds away this year, Archie Gray, 17-year-old kid, ball's going out for a goal kick, just jumps on Bangura on his back just to try and rile him, laughs in his face as Bangura is getting all riled up and just gives him a nice little push. Just shithousery. And our players getting riled up by it. And I'm looking at it thinking, how on earth are you getting wound up by him? Just laughing his face back at him. We've finally got a player that's going to give a little bit back. And we saw firsthand at Millwall what he's like. And genuinely, I'm not getting too sort of carried away and discussing things that we're going to discuss later on in the podcast, but watching him and watching sort of him laughing at the Millwall fans as he strolls over to waste time taking a throw in, I just thought he looks like the least Middlesbrough player ever. Like he doesn't look like he should play for us.
I think it's just because you're so used to seeing him in that league shirt now that
Yeah,
you can't almost alter. I've seen a few people saying this, and I do kind of agree that look, he is a Middlesbrough player, and it's definite, and it's there's no lie, like it's not a Photoshop job, but actually, it just looks strange. I know exactly what you mean by that. But yeah, it's always nice to have one in your team, and if you have a few, then even better. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll get onto his performance a little bit later on. But as you say, Millwall straight into the team, both new signings. Of course, Finn has made his Middlesbrough debut. We had the suspensions and players that were cup tied back as well available: Greenwood, Morgan Rogers. And then also we had, thankfully, Nathan, finally, the sweet Finnish prince on the bench again. And I think because, like I said with the goal, because we'd just taken the lead against Chelsea, that everyone sort of got lost in the moment. Because we'd beaten Chelsea, everyone got lost in the moment and didn't actually realise that Carrick had said post-match that he was starting training with the group. And of course, that meant that he was available for selection. I mean, I must say, before we go into the Millwall performance, it really, really, really excited me looking at that team she'd come through and seeing a bench where you could actually look at it and think, if we need to make changes to try and win this game or see a game out, we actually have options. Dawn, we have options. It feels like for the best part now of probably 4 months that we haven't even had probably 70% of our normal squad to choose from. And I think that in itself, of course, the result, had it have gone a different way, I would have been in a terrible mood. But I was already going into the game with a huge boost just seeing some of the names on that bench. And yeah, Marcus Force, probably top of that list. Just absolutely delighted to see him back involved. And of course, as we'll get on to a little bit later as well, with Josh Coburn out, Michael Carrick said it's sort of almost a day by day thing with him now. There was sort of the rumours that weren't really confirmed about a groin slash hernia injury or operation that he'd had. And I did see him take a kick in the Chelsea game that looked really uncomfortable, in fairness. So, with that being day by day and him having good and bad days, and Latilaf being out for probably a couple of weeks now, we have no recognised striker. But Marcus Force, who we did buy as a striker, a development striker, having that option back now is just going to be so great. But we'll talk about that when we inevitably get onto that wonderful sweeping finish at the end. Yeah, Nathan, it didn't actually start too well at Millwall. They, under new management, well, not new management, Joe Edwards has been there quite a few games now. I think going into the game, they were 5 unbeaten, 3 wins and 2 draws, I think, if I'm correct. And I got a complete shock because you're just used to seeing, although he hasn't even been playing for years, Steve Morrison up top alongside Lee Gregory, just punting balls up and just hoping for sort of knockdowns and a little bit of rough and tumble and this, that, and the other. And it really wasn't that, actually. Credit to Millwall. I thought they started really well, and I was just sort of sat back thinking, If I my fixture list wrong on my app. This can't be a Millwall side they're playing like this.
Yeah, strange one. Obviously sat there waiting for kickoff. You see the team announce, you're like, pretty good side this. Notification comes up, kickoff delayed. Sorry, what? Yeah, Middlesbrough haven't arrived at the ground because they've been stuck in traffic around London. Obviously, yeah, the state of this country, no trains down there, and roadworks on the biggest road into London. Yeah, infrastructure in the country, different conversation, but
It had all the feelings, didn't it, of Leo getting off the bus in the middle of London traffic and trying to guide the bus.
yeah,
And you know exactly which game I'm talking about. And
yeah,
when they 1-0 up, you sort of felt, here we go again almost, didn't you?
yeah. Not going to discuss that horrible, horrible afternoon. Hopefully ever again, actually. But yeah, obviously you're looking at the start and you're thinking, right, let's see what Boro turns up. And for probably the first 25 minutes, half an hour, we were right under the cosh. Obviously they get that goal. Um, Gets cross comes in, sort of half, sort of not cleared away, but just falls to the edge of the box. And Joe Bryan, a player who weirdly I'm looking at their side before the game and thinking, where are their threats? And weirdly, Joe Bryan has quite the knack of scoring against us. He scored twice previously for Bristol City against us, one at the Riverside and one at their place, both of which I've been at. And seeing the ball fall to him on the edge of the box, but on his right foot, I'm thinking, no danger, easy. He's going to probably take the touch and then try and shift it back on his left foot and either deliver a cross back in the box or probably get recycled to the edge. No, he's took it on the half volley as it's coming to the edge of the box, right footed, and just leathered it in the corner. Brilliant. Like
It's
genuinely,
a great finish, isn't it? It
yeah,
really is.
it's a top finish. Can't do anything about it, can Tom Glover. And just sat there in my front room, listening to Hartlepool's commentary over Millwall's goal
Yeah, of
as it
course.
goes in, because yeah, there was a power outage in the ground or something like that. But yeah, just thinking this could be a long afternoon. And it didn't sort of change the sort of momentum in the game didn't change following the goal. They should have doubled the lead. Cross comes in, sorry, corner comes in. Cooper at the back post, probably 5 or 6 yards out, on the volley, cushions it with the inside of his foot and knocks it off the bar. My God.
I don't know how he's.
No, neither do I. And in all honesty, I think it's a really big moment in the game because if they go 2-0 up, it's game done. It really is. I don't think we get back into it. Um, but following that chance, we did start to sort of grow into it a little bit. Um, Sort of just I actually listened to the Millwall commentary for the game, and I've listened to them a few times when we've played them over the years, and they are actually very unbiased, and they were speaking very well about us, saying, yeah, look, despite them being under the cosh, they won't change the principles, they won't change the way that they're going to play. They're going to play out from the back, and they're going to try and do so comfortably. And we did that. We sort of just relaxed, settled down, got back to playing our own way, got in behind them a couple of times. There was that one where the ball got played back to Azaz on the edge of the box and he sort of swept it towards Rodgers, but pass just sort of had a little bit too much on it, made the angle a little bit too tight, and Rodgers couldn't get a good enough shot away. really, to trouble the goalkeeper. But then the goal actually to get us back on level terms, I thought was really impressive. Glover in the sort of brings it to the edge of our box. Centre halves have split. Millwall sort of pressed up quite high, but it was on all day that if you could beat the press, that there was a just acres of space in the middle of the pitch to drive through and then get you into their attacking third. They were sort of sat in two banks, really. Um, and Glover plays a really good ball through the middle of the pitch. I think it is into Greenwood, who drives forward, plays it out wide to Jones. Jones then slides a ball down the side to Greenwood again, who continues his run, really good run. And he does well not to just lash at the cross across the face of goal. He steadies himself, delays, and it's the easiest sort of goal and finish that you're going to ever score from Lucas Engel. Just across the face of goal, unmarked, probably 3 yards out, taps it into an empty net, easy as, and yeah, you're back in the game.
Yeah, you are. And as you say, it always felt yesterday. There was a few times, and I think in the second half, especially, Rodgers had a few moments where he probably got his decision making wrong. But if you beat their press, then there's just a gaping hole, really. And major credit for me, as well as Sam Greenwood here, because let's be honest, he pretty much, well, he does everything in the goal, near enough. But the initial pass from Tom Glover must take out probably 3 or 4 Millwall players. And listen, he's probably not, well, he's not. He's not as comfortable as Seny Dieng on the ball. But by no means is it a real sort of issue either. I think he's just a little bit more sort of safe in a way, I guess. If he is under pressure, Seny Dieng might, try and chop the striker or play a pass and get a 1-2, whereas Glover will just clip it long. In this instance, Glover gets his pass so perfect that it is literally, he almost plays a bigger role in it than what Jones does. And listen, we had that sort of conversation last week about Glover, but again, massive credit to him because I thought he had a really good game yesterday, and of course, involved in this goal as well. And yeah, as you say, Engel gets his first goal, simplest of finish that you could really imagine. And it was strange, really, because throughout the first half, obviously, with being at home watching the game, you're able to look on social media and almost get a live sort of a gauge of opinions about certain players and who's doing what. And I do think it was probably justified that Sam Greenwood was getting a little bit of criticism in the first half, the fact that he wasn't really helping Lucas Engel out too much on the right, not tracking back as much as he probably should have. And then he goes and produces that moment. And listen, we've had this conversation previously about Sam Greenwood, and we were speaking about it before we started recording. And it's still interesting to me the fact that we were really yet to see him in his most natural position. And you think back to that QPR game when he made his debut and we're chasing the game, and he was brought on as a number 10 that day. And had Riley McGree have not picked up that injury, that probably would have been his role. It was him or Crooks, really, when he was brought in to fight it out for that number 10 role. And yeah, okay, you've got to factor into that the fact that Rodgers has found form as well. But when he was brought in, it seemed like it was just going to be a straight shootout between him and the big tree. And sometimes he does get caught out a little bit with his defensive work rate in terms of helping out Engel or Bangura or whoever he's playing with on the left. But in terms of his output, I think that now makes it 8 goal contributions. For a player that really the jury was probably out on early on in the season, it's not a bad return at all. And again, you think of the price that we're aware of, that 1.5 million option, and yeah, okay, it's still down to personal terms and things like that. But for any championship club that negotiated a deal for someone that in his first real, let's be honest, first professional season in the men's game, consistently playing games, you'd be really pleased if they come away. And I mean, the season's still ongoing, but to get to this stage of the season and already have 8 goal contributions, yes, okay, sometimes he does sort of drop in and out of games. And for large spells, he'll drop out of games. But he has these moments in him, and fair play to him, because if he's not doing something, and he hasn't been on the best run, but a lot of the time he will crop up with something, whether it be a pass or a good finish or a set piece. And yeah, it's still a little bit undecided on him, a lot of the fan base. But yeah, he's still making those contributions. And whilst he is making those, I think he's still going to be in with a great shout of getting into that forward line in behind the striker. And just moving on a little bit now into the second half, I said about watching games live, engaging fan opinion. Isaiah Jones has been a little bit of a hot topic, of course, got the assist midweek. Again, he hasn't really had that competition for so long now without Marcus Force being involved. And yet, he's sort of, I don't know if it's because he hasn't had competition or just because all of our games aren't on Sky, because he always performs when he's live on Sky. But there's been a few criticisms thrown at him recently in terms of his overall performance and his end product. And yet he goes and puts us in front with a chance that over the past few weeks, as negative as it sounds, you'd probably put money on Isaiah Jones getting his technique wrong and missing a chance like this. But it's actually a really good finish to put us in front.
Yeah, it is. And he anticipates Brian's header back inside as well, and does really well to anticipate that. Just drives into the box and just slots it home nicely. Does really well to compose himself. Um, just a question: did you feel confident as he's going through on goal, Chris?
As much as I would like to say yes, no, I wasn't at all. I really that, and that's probably not so much an overall feeling because of Isaiah Jones as a footballer. It's just that Huddersfield miss is going to scar me for life, I think.
Yeah, do you want to know what I'd even forgotten about that one? But just in other games throughout December, having chances where he was going through. I think Ipswich, there was one where he'd gone
Hull
through.
was a big one. I think
Hull,
Hull.
Hull definitely, Hull definitely. Um, but going through like one on one, and it might have been West Brom actually, not Ipswich, going through and just sort of not even hitting the target, putting it like way wide. And yeah, anyway, he's got this one spot on, puts it in the back of the net, gets us 2-1 up. And yeah, I think to come back from 1-0 down at the Den's fantastic. To do so without necessarily playing at anywhere near our best is even better. Um, and yeah, for sort of the early part of the second half, Millwall look like they've come out and were trying the best to get themselves back in front at 1-1. And they've got a player up front in Watmore that I think the Millwall commentator actually said as he did about 3 kick-ups to get himself round Vandenberg and turned into pretty much Messi with his close control, gets himself within a shooting opportunity and just sort of passes it into Glover's hands. He said, if Duncan Watmore had end product, we'd have one hell of a player. And my dad's honest reaction was, no, you wouldn't, because he'd still be at Middlesbrough. And I couldn't sort of disagree with that at all. We got rid of him at the right time, as much as I love Dunk. And Yeah, Millwall had those couple of chances before Boro go 2-1 in front, and it felt like with that second goal, it sort of just killed any sort of energy and momentum that they had. It looked like the legs of the players were gone, really. It looked like they tried so hard in that first half to go full throttle and try and get themselves not only into the lead, but extending that lead beyond doubt. And they failed to do so um, with the missed chances that they had. And yeah, they fell foul of that because they made that mistake with Brian. Jones finally puts an easy chance away. And whilst I never get too comfortable watching Middlesbrough in the second half, it did feel relatively just sort of second gear from then on. We didn't have to overextend ourselves. We made a few substitutions which were good. Hackney coming off the bench, Crooks coming off the bench. Obviously, Marcus Force comes in off the bench as well and goes up front as well, which was good to see. A lot of people have made the sort of claim since Carrick come to the club, especially last year, uh, in that December period where Crooks was playing as the number nine and Force was playing off the right, and it was like, well, why would you do that when you've got a number nine playing on the right? Just shot, and obviously we didn't know Jones' circumstances at the time, but just shot Jones on that right hand side, and then you don't have to have Crooks in the side. Um, but yeah, we made changes, managed the game well in that sort of instance. Finally, have been able to rotate the squad with sort of without disrespecting the young lads with fit and proper replacements where the dropping quality isn't too bad. And yeah, we finally get to see Marcus Force as a number nine, probably the most natural finisher at the football club.
I think,
And
yeah,
yeah, one chance for Force, which actually did come from a pretty good goal, really. Won it back in the middle of the park, knocked it back to Ayling. Ayling chips it forward, and it is a good ball. It does look at first like a little bit of a punt forward, but I think it is actually measured into Rodgers. Um, and yeah, Rodgers does well to sort of get it under and flick it towards Force, and yeah, he just drives that ball into the bottom corner. 3 points in the back pocket, and yeah, you leave the Den after a very busy week and a week where there's bound to have been some hangover from the Chelsea game, and yeah, you go to a very difficult place to go in the Den. As you mentioned, they'd gone 5 league games unbeaten prior to playing us, and okay, again, you possibly have a little bit of fortune that they don't go 2-0 up, but get yourselves back into the game and you win it. So yeah, full credit to the boys once again. And yeah, we've got options from the bench now. And just looking at the squad, I mean, we didn't even mention bloody Lewis O'Brien came in the squad in the
yeah,
Chelsea
but, yeah.
in the Chelsea game, and in all honesty, when we signed him, me and you were very pleased with his signing, and sort of the opinion that he could be one of the best central midfielders in the division. And he'll be like a new signing coming into this side now. We've got 2 left backs, so he's not going to be shot at left back anymore, hopefully. Um, and yeah, we've got 4 central midfielders that are all top drawer in this division. yeah, we've got one hell of a squad if they're all fit and available, and it's all just let me just not jinx it, but it's all seemingly coming together at a very nice time.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely is. And do you know what? I think there was two really big positives for me from Saturday. And the first one, of course, was the squad. As I said, just looking at the bench, but seeing those options and finally starting to look like. I mean, yes, okay. In the end, we get the third, and Marcus Forss comes off the bench, and it means a little bit more because he's been out for such an extended period of time. But you bring on Hayden Hackney, and I mean, yes, Hayden Hackney will inevitably come back into the team as a starter week in, week out. But even had the roles been reversed and you bring a Dan Barlasser off the bench, who has, despite being under some really heavy criticism, turned it around almost completely in the past few weeks. It's a, as you say, it's a midfielder that quite a fair few teams in the division would happily snap our hands off for, and they're all fighting amongst each other now to get in that midfield. And the other thing for me, as well as the squad, was Matt Clark comes on yesterday and Carrick slightly tweaks it and we go with the five. And probably because of almost factoring it in with the squad, we haven't had the options to do so. You see that flexibility again yesterday. And to be honest, Millwall didn't really put us under that much pressure where Carrick sort of well, we saw the game out and it did the job, but it wasn't like the absolute Alamo and balls were coming into the box and you just hoy Matt Clark on to try and head things away. But you see with the options that Carrick isn't afraid to make that tweak. Hackney come on, Clark come on. We shift into the five. Vandenberg moves over from initially playing left centre back in a back four to moving over and being the third centre back on the right. And then we just look a little bit more solid to see the game out. And with the players, Morgan Rogers, his ability to carry the ball up the pitch, you're always going to have chances on the counter attack. And ultimately, it's a good clip ball from Ayling. And then we see Rogers get another goal contribution, which he just seems to be absolutely thriving off at the moment, really. And that's just so pleasing. So pleasing. I mean, when you think from where, I mean, it's always good to have perspective on things. Like I was saying earlier, you look back at Lucas Engel, but where you think the squad was, where the bench was it for the West Brom game, where literally apart from, I think, Bangura and Jamie Jones, the bench was quite literally the 23s or 18s. And to have those options now, it's such a boost. And you do think, I mean, the result puts us within 1 point of the playoffs. And yeah, okay, there's four teams that are away and gone now, and they're fighting their own little battle now. But you look at that squad, and yes, okay, Latilaf, Bangura, we've got to add those back in. We may even add some more players in January. But it's as strong of a squad that those sort of teams that are compressed amongst a few points in and around the playoffs, you'd look at ours and you think, when everyone's fully fit and firing, they've got so many good options. And then, I mean, yesterday we're getting linked with Amad Diallo, Nathan. So we can talk about that if you want a little bit. But yeah, really positive. The mood is extremely positive, as you say. And then that link comes out yesterday, Nathan. We will touch on it a little bit. We won't get drawn too much into it until we get more sort of concrete confirmation of that interest. But interestingly enough, I messaged you yesterday morning and say, I've seen online that supposedly we're being linked with Amad Diallo. And I thought, oh, well, it'll be one of those articles where Middlesbrough, along with Leicester, Southampton, Leeds, every other club in the whole world, are just thrown into a big pile and sort of credited with an interest. Anyway, this link comes from the Sunday Express, but it is in the paper version of the paper. And usually you just see a journalist tweet this out. But I said, Nathan, pop to a petrol garage and have a look and see if this really is in the paper. In fact, no, you actually volunteered. So credit to Nathan on this one. Anyway, 25 minutes later or what have you, get sent through a picture, and it is a little column at the bottom. And the story is just about Middlesbrough and Michael Carrick trying to use his Middlesbrough connections to get Amad Diallo on loan. Now, when you factor in that we know Josh Coburn's going nowhere. Yes, he's got an injury. Latilaf, of course, as well. If you then throw Marcus Force into the striker category in this squad, there is a role off the right that looks vacant in terms of having two in each position. Now, it is incredibly unlikely. It would be one hell of a coup if they could pull it off. But there was a little part of me, I must admit, thinking, especially after Carrick's comments of Force being able to play central, could we?
Does make a little bit of sense, doesn't it? Talking about Force going through the middle, and if he's sort of in that striker category now, then you are right. There is the possibility of strengthening that right hand side. I mean, we've been linked with and signed a lot of players that can fulfill that left hand side role. Obviously, Greenwood, Rodgers, McGree, Silvera's predominantly off the left. I mean, we have been. I've been looking at the squad and thinking, well, we do probably need someone off that right hand side to. I mean, Jones is predominantly a player that would go down the outside and try and get across into the box, whereas Diallo is quite the opposite in terms of he cuts inside and gets shots off and in swinging crosses as well. And you don't want to get carried away at all. But if you do get him, then seriously, my God, what an attack you have there if that comes through and everyone is fully fit and available. However, we're not going to get carried away. Apart from the January transfer window, obviously ends at the end of the month. Who's Middlesbrough's first game in February, Chris?
No, we're not getting carried away, Nathan. Exactly who you're alluding to. But yeah, as I say, we had to mention it just to get everyone a little bit excited. But yeah, I don't want to go into it too much because, to be honest, yes, okay, it's a credible link, and it is interesting the fact that Nathan, no one seemingly could find this specific link, given that it was in the paper copy of the Sunday Express. Yet the link was or the sort of rumor link, I don't know what you want to call it, was being shared from various other news sources. So I guess that gives us some sort of credibility, Nathan, really, which, given that last summer we were being accused of making things up around the Akpom situation, despite putting a source in every post. I guess it's a sign of progress from our perspective. But yeah, listen, it's one link, but we'll wait and see if anything sort of materializes. And I think even if that isn't the player that we bring in, we obviously are still looking for that one final sort of addition. And if it's not Diallo, then it's going to have to be a striker, isn't it? And there's been no sort of, I think what's become apparent is since Kieran Scott's come into the club that sort of information leaking out and targets being leaked to the press is minimal, really. There hasn't really been. Kiefer Moore was sort of mentioned along in one of those articles where it's, this team, and this team have an interest. But there's been no sort of target, not like Ayling, where you knew early on that he was going to be a player that we would like in January. It hasn't been that around a striker. So, yeah, still no link with that, but interesting to see what we do in that department, obviously with the injuries and to Latilaf and Josh Coburn, who's suffering obviously at the weekend. But yeah, moving on from transfers and just rounding off the podcast, looking ahead to the Rotherham game. I don't want to call it an opportunity again, Nathan, because that's what I called it during the Christmas period, and look what happened then. This time we are at home. Rotherham under Liam Richardson, of course. It's had a fair few games now. Hasn't really probably had the impact that Rotherham fans thought he might, although he did still beat us over the festive period. So, I mean, there is that in it. But yeah, it's a game that, without being aware of typical Boro and alluding to that, you think it is a game that, if you want to be in and around those top six positions at home against a team of Rotherham's league table standard, you have to just go and beat them. It's as simple as that. And we have players back now. The squad is getting ever stronger. We may even get some movement this week. You've just got to go and beat them. And it's as simple as that, really, Nathan.
Yeah, it's an opportunity, and you're sort of looking at the fixtures of the weekend alongside ourselves, and you think, well, we've got the team that are bottom of the league. Coventry are on fire, and they've got second bottom, albeit away from home. And then you think of the other sides that are above us in the table. Watford are now, I can't remember who they've got, but Sunderland and Hull are also above us, and they play each other on Friday night. So that gives you the opportunity that if you win this game, you're going to leapfrog at least one of those sides. However, as you mentioned about typical Borough there, and hopefully not alluding to it, as you mentioned, got Rotherham at home. Rotherham are winless in 30 away games. So the last 30 away games haven't won. And in the last 15 games that they've played, they've only won one game. Against who?
Yeah, I think I know who.
Yeah, it would be us. So yeah, there's the typical Borough fire. They're a side that are really sort of, no matter what, no matter the season that they've been in the Championship, they predominantly struggle, don't they? And that's partly down to, yes, they're a smaller club. Yes, they have a smaller budget than a lot of the league. But at the same time, the recruitment strategy probably has to be questioned a little bit on their part. You look at sort of Plymouth and like Brentford, the smaller sides that have come up from League One over the years, who have had their recruitment model in check. They've signed players that they have the view to develop them and then sell them on for profit. And you look at Rotherham, and the sign, in the nicest way possible, players that have slogged it out in the Championship for the careers, and they're at the back end of the careers with no sell-on value. And in that case, you're not going to be able to improve your budget because you keep buying these players that you can't turn a profit on. So yeah, in that way, I suppose that you can point blame a little bit and say, well, it is their own fault. It's not just because they've got a small budget, because other sides have done special things in the past with smaller budgets. But yeah, the top and bottom of it is exactly what you've said, Chris. It's a massive opportunity to win the game and get yourself another 3 points on the board and keep yourself climbing up that Championship table. So hopefully we do the business. I mean, we've got a week now before that game, a free week. Even as you mentioned, Coburn's day by day being assessed. So hopefully that gives him the opportunity to get some rest into the legs, along with a lot of the other players that have been playing Saturday, Tuesday recently. And yeah, a free week ahead of Rotherham and then Chelsea on the Tuesday. And I think the main thing that we're probably going to see from the week is hopefully a little bit more transfer news. I mean, that's probably a little bit wishful thinking because it may go down to the wire now, with probably one more transfer in. There may be a couple of transfers out in terms of the younger players, but also something that Boro fans will be looking at is Birmingham's result tomorrow night, because we may have a free weekend in a couple of weekends' time. If they get through the FA Cup against Hull on Tuesday night. So yeah, will be interesting to see. But Boro could have 9 or 10 days off after Chelsea to go out on the lash if we get a Wembley. So yeah, it sounds pretty good to me.
Sure, the players will be keeping a keen eye on that in case they do pull off the unthinkable, and then they can have a couple of nights of one hell of a we're heading to Wembley party. But we've seen them sorts of things go terribly wrong in the past. So yeah, we definitely don't want to be getting too drawn into things like that. But yeah, we hope you've enjoyed this week. We definitely have momentum to build on, a very positive mood, players coming back from injury, players being added to the squad, and overall a real feel-good factor, both at the club and on this podcast this week. So yeah, if you have enjoyed, please do remember to give us a thumbs up on YouTube and subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you've listened on audio platforms, give us a review and leave some kind words. 5 stars, of course. Don't give us 4. And yeah, I think you can subscribe to our audio sort of feed as well if you want to be notified when we upload these podcasts on a Monday evening. So yes, all that's left to be said is thank you very much once again from me and Nathan, and that has been another episode of the Boropolis podcast.